Okay, so I'm getting the sign that it's 20 past 10. So let's start. Welcome. The timer is also starting. Welcome to this little fairy tale session. I want to speak a little bit about the past, but also about the future. What exactly am I talking about? So maybe you remember once upon a time when you wanted to learn security, especially in the web application world, all you had were server-side rendered applications to play with, right? So PHP, active server pages, JSP, all that kind of beautiful stuff. But up to a certain point in the past, there were no modern applications to actually learn from. This changed in 2014, 10 years ago, almost, when the Juice Shop entered the stage. And this is basically what I'm talking about today. So we will do a little history of the OWASP Juice Shop project from start to the current state. This will serve as an introduction for those who don't know the Juice Shop yet. And it will also, I guess, deliver something new for those who have already used the Juice Shop in the past, but maybe haven't caught up with the latest development over the last few years, right? Because we were busy, especially during the pandemic time, there were lots of nice additions being made. So who has used the Juice Shop before? Okay, that's slightly less than 50%, I would say, very nice. One very important note up front, if you missed out on the beautiful blinky stickers yesterday in the hallway, I have a whole pile of them here up front so you can grab them afterwards. If you grab a sticker, please also grab a postcard with all the information about the Juice Shop and give it to a colleague who's not here, who has never heard of the project, right? Just to spread the word a little bit. Right, so welcome again. My name is Björn. I am the project lead of the OWASP Juice Shop. My day job is in IT, so I'm managing a large team in an even larger logistics company in Germany. We are dealing with cloud-related topics, platforms, application security, all kinds of things. So, but the Juice Shop is basically my hobby project. Starting a little bit in the past, how did this project actually come to be? So around 2007, 2008, I started to get interested in application security and I got aware of OWASP Top 10 and these kind of related things. And I was looking for a way to actually, how to teach developers these interesting topics. And I was looking for some practical ways to play with security vulnerabilities. And what I found back then was this little application, Altoro Mutual, which is a server-side rendered application with a couple of security vulnerabilities, but it was built not to actually use in trainings for manual exploration, but rather as a demo tool for a commercial security scanner, right? So basically the vendor built this application to show how cool their product was and what all kinds of vulnerabilities it could find, which is good. And I used it for quite some time still for manual exploration. But it was very limited in functionality and scope, right? So it didn't really feel realistic. A couple years later, I switched to a different application, still server-side rendered, the Budget Store. This is basically also a companion application to another security project, ZAP, right? Who knows ZAP? Yeah, okay, very good. So some folks already. So ZAP is basically a proxy that you can put between your application and your browser to analyze all the traffic going back and forth, right? And so it can help you find security vulnerabilities depending on what you send and what you get back, right? So and this is basically the companion app for that to actually demonstrate how much security vulnerabilities this tool can find. As you might see, and I guess agree, this basically looks like an application that was built by someone who's more, let's say, specialized on backend, not on user interfaces, right? So it is actually functioning as a little web shop, so you can put stuff in your shopping basket and you can log in and you can do all kinds of things, but it's not very realistic. I took also a look at a completely different application to maybe use in my trainings. That was OWASP WebGoat. This is a little bit of a different thing because it doesn't try to be a realistic application like a banking site or a web shop. It is really a lesson-based system, right? So you basically get like level 1, level 2, level 3 exercises that you can just do. But it doesn't feel like you're working with a real website or real web app. So that's why I basically didn't use it, because I wanted to teach developers based on something that is actually, that could be real, right? That was my goal. And that's why in 2014, I actually started developing and also released the first version of the Juice Shop. So this is a rich internet application using Angular as a front end, Node.js back end, and it was already back then full of quite a few nice security vulnerabilities, and the idea was that it should be easy to explore manually, but you can also play around with tools to see if they find certain problems. And I basically built this because the existing applications didn't fulfill my demands, so to speak, and I also wanted to learn a little bit more JavaScript development, because up until then, I considered myself a 100% Java developer, right? And by now I basically shifted to the dark side, and I'm now doing JavaScript, TypeScript almost exclusively for Juice Shop. So when it started, this was really a personal pet project of mine, right? So I just released it under my own GitHub account. Handful of people saw it maybe. I spoke about it at a few occasions at local meetups and stuff. But as you can see, I didn't take much care to actually have a nice website or anything. This was just a generated GitHub page. So yeah, pretty bland, I would say. In 2016, so just 2 years later, I actually offered the project, which was by then complete, I would say, or it felt complete, that then I submitted as a project to the OWASP Foundation, right? So where it was accepted and became an incubator project for not that long, was then quite quickly, because it was already more or less finished, was then pretty quickly promoted into lab status, and 2 years later, it became already a flagship at OWASP, which it still is. So you might ask yourself, why is this project called Juice Shop? Well, actually, I'm a fan of cheap jokes and puns, so it's a German wordplay, so to say. In Germany, we have a word called Saftladen, which is something you say when you mean, okay, this shop is terrible, or this bar is terrible, or whatever, right? So it's a really terrible shopping experience, or just an experience being there. We call that is a Saftladen. And Saftladen is comprised of 2 words, Saft and Laden, which is juice and shop in English. That's basically all that's to it. By coincidence, Juice Shop, JS, also matches the initials of the technology stack. But I swear this was an accident, right? But it turned out to be quite useful. Because when I was looking for a logo, when it started, I was really lazy, and I'm not a graphics expert in any capacity. So I started with something that I just grabbed from Wikipedia. So this is basically, I think, one of the first images you get when you just search for orange juice, right? So, and it's public domain, so legally it's fine. 1 year later, I actually asked, because I had an idea of using this. Maybe you remember these HTML5 shield logos. There was also one for JavaScript, and I wanted to build something from that, but I cannot draw, so I asked a designer at my company if he maybe could give it a shot, and this is what came out of it, right? So the 2015 version with the JavaScript shield as a juice box leaking out of this little hole here. And 2 years later, this logo got an upgrade, I would say, visually. And this is still what we use today, right? There's variations with a flagpole being pushed through it, like you can see when you grab your stickers. So, what's the purpose of the Juice Shop, actually? The Juice Shop is full of hacking challenges. So, it has vulnerabilities and you're supposed to find them. When I released it initially, the first version from 21st of October 2014, it had 23 hacking challenges. Most of them were cross-site scripting, SQL injection, some access control issues, so pages you were not supposed to visit but were just hidden, not properly protected, and also some information leakage. So there were some overly detailed error messages and this kind of stuff. Total of 23 challenges. Today we have 106 hacking challenges spread across a ton of different categories. So it's not just the purely technical ones like cross-site scripting, injection, and this kind of stuff, but also more sophisticated attacks where you need to, I don't know, you need to find some secret somewhere else, maybe even on the internet, and then use it to perform an exploit on the Juice Shop itself, to basically simulate that someone might have lost their password or some other sensitive information, right? And you're now abusing it to log in. So basically, the Juice Shop has every problem that is described in the OWASP Top 10, not only the latest edition, but also all previous editions since 2014, I think so, or 2007 even. I think the only exception is that we don't actually have a buffer overflow. That's the only thing we don't have. But I still claim on the Juice Shop's Twitter account that we are 100% OWASP Top 10 in compliant. And I'm proud of that. When Juice Shop started, it had 3 difficulty levels. So easy, medium, hard. That was the idea, right? So to just give people an idea what to hack next. And that was all we needed. So there were no categorizations or anything. It was just, okay, here's an easy, medium, or hard challenge. That's it. And on the scoreboard, as you can see here, it just tracked if you have solved the challenge or not. Pretty straightforward. In 2018, so 4 years later, with a lot more challenges already, we had to go up with the difficulty levels a bit, because the hard challenges became increasingly harder and harder, and it wasn't fair to just all throw them into one pile or to downgrade hard ones into medium, right? So we bumped it to 6 difficulty levels. So it's now easy, medium, hard, even harder, extremely hard, and impossible, so to speak. In 2019, we introduced categories and filters, because with a growing number of challenges you could actually solve, it was actually getting harder to find your way around the scoreboard, right? If you wanted to focus, for example, on one specific type of vulnerability, like here in this example, injection and cross-site scripting, you had to really scroll through the scoreboard a lot. So we introduced filters and also categorized challenges properly so that you would know that this challenge is about cross-site scripting, right? This didn't really give away too much information to the users because they still had to figure out where exactly do we have to do this cross-site scripting attack and how does it actually work. So that was a quite useful addition to actually make the application a little bit more convenient to use. 2 years ago, we added a completely new type of challenge, the so-called coding challenges. They work like this. For certain technical challenges, technical hacking challenges, when you solved them, you could then afterwards go to the scoreboard and launch a coding challenge, which would present you a code snippet. Actually, the code snippet with some surrounding code that is not really related, that is responsible for the vulnerability and for the actual problem. And then you, as a user, have to select the line or multiple lines which are actually responsible for the vulnerability. When you solve that correctly, then you would go to the next phase of the coding challenge and you would have to select from 3 or 4 different fixes the one which you think solves the problem best, right? And that these 3 to 4 fixes provided typically contained some which were completely silly, but there were typically also 1 or 2 which seemed quite useful or quite right, but then still had some small flaw or introduced even a completely new problem. And when you selected a wrong one, then you would always get an explanation that told you, okay, this is why this is not the right solution. And then you could just try again until you find it. So all in all, Juice Shop has 137 things for you to do, right? Hacking or finding code vulnerabilities. That's quite a bit. So that's nothing you typically can do anymore over a weekend, right? One downside of having so much stuff to do and then also having to introduce so many filter options and this and that, our scoreboard actually got quite cluttered, right? So it had too many buttons, too many toggles, too many things here and there. The tabular layout also wasn't really that great. And the most significant problem, the loading time, was getting really terrible, right? So the scoreboard in the Juice Shop for many years was the only screen where I explicitly had to include a loading spinner, right? Because it really took like 10 seconds sometimes to actually render if you had all challenges visible. Well, this problem is solved because we now, since end of last year, have a completely new redesigned scoreboard, which uses a tile-based layout, which is a lot more orderly. It loads super fast, so it doesn't matter how many filters you've set or not. It's instantly there, and yeah, it looks much nicer. Actually, OWASP was so kind to fund a professional UI UX designer for our project that basically made some design proposals. We went over them with the project team, and until we were happy. And one of my core team members actually took those and then more or less, not overnight, but very quickly actually implemented them into the actual new scoreboard that we are now using. Since the last release, version 16, this is the default scoreboard that you see, but there's still an option for those who are, I don't know, a little bit nostalgic maybe. You can still switch back to the old, slow and cluttered scoreboard, but don't get too attached to it, because with the next major release, version 17, it will be removed completely, right? Okay, so Juice Shop is not only about the hacking challenges, but it also has some, let's say, additional nice features and capabilities. So right from the beginning, I had the intent to make it a real fake web shop or fake real web shop, whatever you like, right? The idea is it should look and feel like an actual application where you could buy stuff online, and the only thing missing basically is the actual delivery of the ordered items, right? And the actual payment, obviously, as well. So, but basically you can follow the whole process, from putting stuff into your shopping basket, searching for items. You can do the purchase, you get a tracking link, you get an invoice as a PDF showing everything. You can leave reviews for the products, you can leave a review in total for the shop, you can upload photos of your items to our photo wall. So it's basically a complete shopping experience. You can even enable two-factor authentication, which makes it very secure, or at least it would make it very secure if we were competent enough to store the secrets for the two-factor authentication properly, which we aren't. But yeah, so basically you can do quite a bit with this. Back in 2019, we introduced some feature especially for beginners. We called this the hacking instructor. It's kind of a tutorial mode that you can trigger for some of the challenges. So you just click a button on the scoreboard, and then a little friendly robot that's also leaking juice for some reason will tell you some steps to do to actually perform some of these challenges, right? So it will basically guide you through some of the easier 1- and 2-star difficulty challenges. And it will wait for certain inputs to trigger to actually continue with the next step. It's not super sophisticated, and you can get it confused if you do other stuff in between, but you can always basically shut down the tutorial and restart it again if you like. What the Juice Shop also has for several years now is dedicated support for capture the flag events, which is quite nice if you want to do a team team event, for example. So you can start the Juice Shop with a flag bringing it into CTF mode, and then when you solve a challenge, it will not only tell you, yay, you did a challenge, but it will also tell you a flag code. Seen here at the top, right? So this string here is the flag code for this particular challenge. Well, now the question is what to do with such a flag code. So what you need is a central server which tracks the score for the entire CTF and tracks all the teams and all the participants, basically. That is nothing that we wanted to write ourselves because there's open source third-party options available, right? So what we did, we created a tool that you could run that would generate the backup format or data dump format of 3 popular CTF servers, which you could then, so that would include all the Juice Shop challenges with all the matching flag codes for which your application would then generate. So you just would have to import that into your CTF server, and then automatically all the flags that the participants would generate would become valid, and you could just like set up a CTF in a very short time and very conveniently. To make multi-user scenarios even more convenient, there's an additional project that actually started independently from the Juice Shop project, but has last year joined the Juice Shop overall OWASP scope, and that is multi-juicer, which is this logo here, right? We also have stickers, but I didn't have any actually to bring here, unfortunately. So this is essentially a setup for getting a Kubernetes cluster with multiple Juice Shop instances up and running. And in front of the cluster, there's our juice balancer, which basically assigns users to dedicated instances via some team code, right? So you can make sure that people can only interact with their instance. And the multi-juicer will then internally also track the scores of the individual instances, and therefore the participants, and will display them in a kind of lightweight CTF style, right? So if you want to do a team event, but you don't want to do a serious CTF with all the fanciness, this might be just totally enough for you, right? So you just deploy multi-juicer, you just tell it how many instances you want for the participants, and then you can basically, on a big screen, you can just show the scoreboard all the time, and you will know who's actually leading, right? So pretty neat. A nice feature that the Juice Shop also has is you can completely override its look and feel. So this was added already in 2017 because the main reason was the following. When the Juice Shop is used by technically skilled people and by, let's say, mostly by developers and IT nerds, it works like it is quite nicely, right? So the dark layout is always appreciated, and there are some funny products in the shop. Developers typically like that, right? And can do the translation into their own scope of work. Managers cannot necessarily do the same. So if I would want to do a presentation to IT or general management to explain how certain security issues can exist in our own web applications, in my company, showing them the Juice Shop in its vanilla look and feel doesn't really work with them, right? So instead, you can configure the Juice Shop to look completely different color theme, completely different products, different logo, different title, even different email suffixes and Twitter links, right? So you can completely rebrand it, and it then looks at least familiar to what your audience knows, right? So this is very, very useful for awareness sessions with a less technical audience. The Juice Shop is also able, for quite some time now, to at least give a good guess if you're cheating while working with it. So what it will do is it will look at the time that passes between solving two challenges. And essentially, if you're too fast, it will assume that there's something fishy going on, right? So this cannot be right. So that you solve this 6-star challenge in 30 seconds, that must be wrong. And then you basically get a cheat score assigned. Time is not the only component that goes into this cheat score system. It's also checking the relationship of certain challenges. And it also checks for certain, let's say, preceding interaction with the application that you would normally expect when solving a specific challenge. For example, we have some folder that has directory listing enabled. And in that folder, there are some files you're supposed to download. But you can only download them with a specific type of attack, right? So you need to basically trick the server to give you the files, although they are on a block list for their file suffix. So, and all this needs you to at least visit this folder one time and then also trying to access this file that you're supposed to download without any tricks. Right? So these two interactions, the Juice Shop really wants to see before you just fire the final attack command, right? So if you just use Google search to find a solution for this particular challenge and you just copy paste the URL, then the Juice Shop will think, they didn't even try to go to the folder first or try to access the file, so I give them a higher cheat score. This is not bulletproof, I would say. And it also only works kind of for when you have new users to Juice Shop, right? So if you have someone who's worked with Juice Shop for many years, then of course they are faster than normally allowed, right? So just consider this as something to look into, for example, when you're teaching students, right? So if there's one student who's always getting 90+% cheat scores, they might just be having a solution next to them and just typing things off there. Speaking about solutions, the Juice Shop can also, if you want, emit a webhook call when a challenge has been solved. So it will then basically post the name of the challenge, the cheat score, and some other information. This is internally, for example, used by the multi-juicer to update its own internal scoreboard, right? But this could also be used by a third-party tool if you wanted to. Why stop with boring webhooks when you can also have a complete Grafana dashboard available with all the statistics of your running Juice Shop instance, right? So we deliver a JSON template for Grafana, which gives you this lovely dashboard here with the statistics of the current challenge status, but also the technical status, memory usage, all the basic stuff, and even some business statistics, like how many orders have been put in, how much money is in total in all users' digital wallets, right? So things like this. And this is coming out of the box if you import this into your Grafana server. I'm also a big fan of documenting stuff properly. So I decided to not just go with long and longer README in my GitHub repository, but I actually created an online readable / ebook documentation, which basically has all the information about Juice Shop. For using it, setting it up, what types of challenges exist, all the basics, but it also has chapters for all the more technical things like contribution guidance, instructions for when you, for example, want to add a new coding challenge. How does that work? How does the cheat detection exactly work? And it even has step-by-step solutions for each and every challenge, right? So if you are really desperate with one of the 6-star challenges, you can just look in there and see, okay, this is the steps and how it's supposed to work. And this is free to read online. You can also get it for free on LeanPub. So it's been downloaded quite a few times already. Okay, so some technology stuff. So what's running behind the scenes in the Juice Shop? Back when it started, this was an Angular 1 I think 1.4 something application with Bootstrap as a UI library. At the backend, Node.js with Express as the routing framework, so to say. We use a SQLite database, which is a blessing. It has some problems, but in overall, this was a really great way to set things up, because the SQLite database is just a file, right, on your file system, but it's still connected to via and spoken to via SQL, right? So it's very, very lightweight and simple. And the beautiful thing is, thanks to this architecture, Juice Shop can run in a single Docker image. So there's no Docker Compose or anything involved. You don't need to have a separate database server. It's all included. And this is still the case, right? By now we are, of course, on a later Angular version. Currently it's Angular 15. Updating to 16 still causes some headaches due to compiler changes, but that's an open GitHub issue already. We now use material design instead of Bootstrap, but the backend is pretty much still the same. So we still use Express. We use a different framework for the object relational mapping towards the database. And we also introduced a MongoDB, but a JavaScript implementation that runs in memory, which is a really beautiful thing to demonstrate some NoSQL injection attacks, but it's not really recommended to be used in production, because this particular library hasn't been updated for many, many years. It's full of security vulnerabilities, which is great for us, but would be bad for you if you would want to use it, right? So please do not even consider using MarsDB in any of your own applications. But for our purposes, this is amazing because, again, it's also, as it's running in memory, we can still have everything in a single Docker container. Already from the start, we try to make Juice Shop as easy to install as possible, right? So you can install it, of course, locally with Node.js. You can use the Docker image, as mentioned. We have a Vagrant file, if you like that. And then there's also instructions how to get it running on every, let's say, major cloud provider. So pretty straightforward. In case you're using Kali Linux, just in case, please do not try to install it locally with Node.js. Just go directly to Docker, because Kali is known to be terrible with running native Node.js apps. Or at least it's terrible with the Juice Shop, right? So I've seen so many requests for help when someone tried to use Juice Shop natively on Kali. Just use Docker. That's much, much easier. I'm not only a documentation nerd, but I'm also a testing nerd. So right from the start of the project, I tried to have a very, very high overall test coverage. So we basically have 3 layers of tests. At the foundation, we have unit tests for the front end and for some server code. Then in the middle, we have integration/API tests. So basically, we start a server and then we basically crawl the entire API for certain, for almost all use cases, which is kind of nice. But the biggest benefit we actually get from our end-to-end test suite, which is by now done in Cypress. Previously it was Protractor, but that we just in 2022 migrated over to Cypress. So these tests do not check if the shop functionality works. These tests actually exploit all the challenges. So it's basically simulating, or not, I mean, it's basically playing through all the attack paths on the browser, or sometimes with direct server communication, to get all the challenges exploited. So if you want, and also that's also one of the things I test the cheat detection with. So when the end-to-end test suite is running, or has been running through, which takes, I don't know, 10 minutes or something, then I have a total cheat score of 99.9%. So then, at least for that case, the cheat detection works. Okay, got some time left, so let's leave the technical part and talk a little bit about the Juice Shop community. Starting with the core team. So obviously there's me, project lead, and also main contributor, I would say. There's Yannick, who is the guy who actually invented the multi-juicer and who also completely rewrote the scoreboard. So he did the complete implementation of the new scoreboard. There's Shubham, who is our Google Summer of Code student from 2022, who did the Cypress migration back then, who's basically our joker for all kinds of tasks. And there's Timo, who's actually back. I would say he's one of the earliest adopters of the Juice Shop who used it for his security trainings that he offered. And he's also the one who invented this whole customization and theming mechanism, where you can basically reskin the Juice Shop completely. So the four of us are basically the core team, but we of course have additional contributors who bring in code once in a while, or maybe just once. All in all, the biggest slice of the pie, that's my own contributions, because I started this whole thing, and I'm still doing most of the maintenance stuff. But as you can see, there have been lots of small contributions, but small contribution doesn't mean that it's not valuable, right? So, for example, I think the percentage-wise, Timo actually contributed 0.14% of the Juice Shop's code base. But as I told you, one of this contribution was actually the whole theming, right? So don't take these percentage values too seriously, because it's about the content, not the quantity. The Juice Shop is also translatable, and we use CrowdIn to actually get translations done quite quickly and easily, and everyone who has a CrowdIn account can contribute. My own contributions are a little bit inflated here, so I didn't really translate 42,000 strings. Also, I cannot speak Dutch, although it says here that I can, which was a fun incident when I was last speaking in Belgium. Someone just approached me and started talking in Dutch to me, and I was like, huh? And he said, oh, but on the slide it said you can speak Dutch. Okay. The thing is, I just translate all I basically add new translation files, and the service here thinks, okay, if you add the translation file, you probably speak the language as well. No, you don't have to. We are, as an open source project, we are very, very happy to receive contributions, and we want to make it as easy as possible to onboard new contributors. So we have extensive contributor guidance documented. We have labels in GitHub which make it easy for new contributors to pick something, right? So there's a good first issue label, and which are supposedly easier tasks to get started with. And there's help wanted labels, which typically involve some, let's say, more complex problem, which none of us from the core team might even have the right skill set for. Right? One example, we currently have some problems with our JWT-based challenges, and I am totally not a JWT expert, but it would need a JWT expert to actually check what's broken there, right? And if that doesn't happen anytime soon, then maybe we just have to remove those JWT challenges at some point. If you contribute to the Juice Shop, you get stickers. If you go to a conference, you also get stickers. So I value conference visitors as much as I value actual code contributors. And I mean that seriously. The thing is, so we actually want to make sure that even as a one-time contributor, if you contribute something more than just fixing a typo, which I typically reject as a pull request, by the way, then you just, if you send me your email, not your email, but your post address, I will put some stickers in an envelope and send them over to you. Disclaimer, the time span between you contributing and me going to the post office and actually putting in that letter, that varies, let's say, right? So it can take a while, but you will eventually get your stickers. For you, it's easy. You can just grab the stickers right after the talk. For bigger contributions, we also sometimes handed out bigger rewards, so to say, right? So, for example, hoodies, T-shirts, stuff like that. So, yeah, Juice Shop actually is pretty popular, I would say, at least according to its GitHub stars. So when it became an OWASP project in 2016, around here, you can see that the curve more steadily goes up than it did before. It made a little jump here in 2021, but I will not tell you why it did that. You can solve that riddle on your own. It's not that hard, actually, to be honest. But I would actually like to have a similar incident in the near future, if possible, because then we might even reach 10,000 stars for our 10th anniversary, which would be quite cool. This is by far my most favorite slide of the entire presentation. So some statistics about the Juice Shop. We had over the time a total of 102 contributors. As mentioned, we are a flagship project. The Juice Shop has a gold medal from the OpenSSF best practices test, so to say. So that's basically like a self-assessment that you do, where you have to prove that you fulfill certain security practices. And it's quite easy to get the lowest grade, but it's significantly harder to get to the higher grade. The thing is, I had to convince the OpenSSF owners that they shouldn't count the intentional vulnerabilities of the Juice Shop when doing this assessment, right? So, and they agreed to that. So the gold medal is not for the actual security, it's for basically all the surrounding processes and other things. Yep, test coverage, pretty nice still for an open source project. Maintainability score of A for a 10-year-old project is also not that bad, although there are some dark corners in the Juice Shop source code by now. But the most interesting ones, of course, the number of downloads. So on GitHub, 282,000 times the sum of the package have been downloaded as a zip file. I also deployed to SourceForge, which also sees some downloads still. And the last number is the one that actually deserves an extra slide. So the Juice Shop has been pulled from the Docker Hub repository 81 million times in the last 10 years. And I'm still sure that someone has been paying quite a bit for some accidentally huge cluster that they set up, right? Or that for the traffic that they caused. I cannot imagine that there's really a need for 81 million Juice Shops in 10 years, because that would mean every year 8 million Juice Shops have been used. That seems a little suspiciously high. But still, it's a nice number. So, up next is the actual favorite slide of mine in this deck. Since 2018, we actually have an official project pet. And that is our family cat. Why did we add her as a kind of almost mascot of the Juice Shop? The Juice Shop, as I mentioned, doesn't only have technical challenges. It also has some challenges which require, for example, social stalking. So you need to find out some information about a person and then hope that they were, let's say, careless enough to use this personal information, for example, as a security question or as an answer to a security question. For example, what's the name of your favorite pet, right? So, and of course, I have one account in the Juice Shop where I did exactly that. So I used our cat's name, and there's different places on the internet where you can actually find out what the name of our cat is, right? And then you can use that to actually reset my account password. In the process, explaining why certain information doesn't really belong, A, publicly on the internet, and B, especially not in a security context for as a password or security question. So for this particular challenge with the cat, Actually, by accident, dropped her name during a presentation in 2018, which was recorded and published. And the default step-by-step solution basically is that you pick up her name from this video. By now, there's also tweets and all other places where you can do that, but this was basically the first thing. And fun fact: this video in the OWASP video list is the top 15 of over 1,200 videos that OWASP has. And I'm pretty sure it's not because it's such a great, up-to-date presentation about Juice Shop, right? It's only for that few seconds where I drop the name of our cat. Since 2020, the Juice Shop even has its own jingle. And I didn't dare to write that it's the only open source project in the world that has this, but I'm almost certain it is. But I play it safe and say, okay, very few open source projects probably have their own jingle. If we have time at the end, after the questions, if you want, I can play it. Otherwise, there's also a hacking challenge that involves doing a cross-site scripting attack to embed this SoundCloud player into the Juice Shop itself. So you can easily play the jingle within your own Juice Shop instance and solve a hacking challenge in the process, which might also contribute to the total number of 100-something thousand plays of this. As a project in the OWASP Foundation, we participate in Google Summer of Code, and we do this since 2018 already. And sometimes with 2, sometimes with 1 student. So we had a variety of projects, and we really, really like this format, right? So Google Summer of Code, for those who don't know, basically Google is paying students for the summer, during the summer holidays, for delivering value to open source projects. So the students put up a proposal that might get accepted, then they implement something over the summer holidays, and this then gets, when it gets included into the open source projects and the mentors say, yep, that's good, then the students get paid by Google, which is really a nice model. And for us, it worked very nicely. Last year, we had 2 students. One, V# implemented a handful of Web3 challenges in the Juice Shop. These are the ones, so these are among those challenges where I'm personally no longer able to actually explain and guide through how they actually work, right? Because this is some extravagant stuff, right? So you need to have a proper MetaMask wallet, you need to connect that, you need to interact with some testnet blockchain stuff. Pretty neat, but also, of course, there's known vulnerabilities in the Web3 world. And if you're convinced that Web3 is cool or just a buzz to fail, doesn't matter. The technology is there and it has vulnerabilities, so we are happy to show them to the interested users. The second Summer of Code project from last year was a complete migration of our documentation. So originally, I wrote the companion guide in Markdown and used Gitbook to actually generate ebook formats and a website from it. This hasn't been maintained for many years now, Gitbook, in that version that I used. So our second student, Pav, actually took all that content and migrated it to AsciiDoc/Antora, which is now working like a charm and is much more reliable and convenient to use. All right, so to wrap up, our project roadmap for the foreseeable future. So in October this year, it's basically officially the 10th anniversary of the Juice Shop. We are still in the collection phase for some cool or even crazy ideas for things we want to do in the anniversary time. Another roadmap item is for me, which is up for quite some time. I would really like to get my test coverage back over 90%, because this, Under 90 feels always a little bit wrong to me. So, but this is harder than you might think. Overall, Juice Shop has, like I mentioned, with the Angular 16 problems we currently have, has some technical debt accumulated, which we now need to pay back over time, right? And I would really like to use this year to actually get some things again up to date so that we can make sure that Juice Shop will survive for as long as the Node.js/Angular stacks are used. And last but not least, I would really like to sell our official NFTs, because when you offer Web3 hacking challenges, why wouldn't you also have NFTs of your own, right? So, and if you don't believe me, I can show you. We actually have these NFTs here on OpenSea. And because I'm such a dummy when it comes to this stuff, I actually mispriced them when I set up the collection. So I basically have here, for example, 50 of these NFTs, and I put up the price for one that I wanted for the entire collection. So it's basically a 98% discount if you want to buy one, right? So I think it's like 26 cents or something. 27, sorry. So 27 cents to actually get this NFT. So if you're interested in this kind of shenanigans, feel free. Now is the best chance to get these for cheap, and then hopefully sell them for thousands of euros or Norwegian crowns later, right? Because this is totally not a bubble to burst, right? This is, it's to the moon, right? All goes up. But seriously, if you are into silly stuff and you want to own a piece of Juice Shop history, even if it's just a silly pixelated avatar, this is the best chance to get them. So, coming to the end, but as we have still time, not completely the end, because in the abstract I promised to actually tell about some things we have planned for the 10th anniversary in more detail. And I picked two things we already have as concrete ideas. The first one is to make it possible to hack the original Juice Shop in the current Juice Shop. Now, who's old enough here to know the computer game Day of the Tentacle? Okay, that's more than I expected. Very good. So this is a point-and-click adventure, a very nice one. And in this adventure, you could find a computer in one of the rooms, and you could interact with this computer. And when you did, you were able to launch the predecessor of this game. So Day of the Tentacle is from '93. The Manic Mansion game is from 1987, right? And you are able to launch this within Day of the Tentacle and play the whole game in the other game with saving and everything. So if you only wanted to play Manic Mansion, you always had to go to Day of the Tentacle, walk to this computer room, and then load your current save game from there, right? It's a little bit, it's like if you watched Inception, it's basically like going down one dream level, right? So, and this is exactly what we are envisioning, that you can somehow find an Easter egg in the current Juice Shop version that allows you to play the version 1.0 of Juice Shop, right? And in the best case, even solving all the challenges in there separately. This is a little bit of a, let's see how that works out. So Yannick actually did some attempts to get this running, but it's not that trivial, I would say. Another example of a little fun project we have, we actually want to make it possible for trainers to bring their whole multi-juicer cluster into a training room or into a lecture room with them in a fancy box, right? And not just a cardboard box or something, but a nice Lego box. So actually, when I last spoke at the OWASP Benelux Days in Belgium, I met a guy who's actually really good with Legos, and he's in some local Lego group. So this guy, Bram, actually took up the challenge to design such a case for the Juice Shop from Lego bricks. And I must say, this is his version 0.1, he says, but I'm already very impressed by this. This draft version is made from 907 Lego bricks. And if you would use the usual order process to just try and get all the bricks from different marketplace vendors, you would end up with a cost of around, I think he said initially he ended up with 800 euros. I think he got it down to like 200 or 300 at some point, which is still quite a bit. So I might at some point in the future look for sponsors to actually get me such a Lego case. I would even consider using the free empty site to actually place the sponsor logo. So once the time is there, I will launch a campaign on Twitter or something to find sponsors for this. So this is actually it. We have 4 minutes left, so please feel free to ask any questions if you have any. If you don't, we can still use the time to just launch the Juice Shop jingle while you're leaving the room. You get some nice music. But questions first. Don't be shy. Yes, please. Yeah, I can. Unless there's another question, then I'm happy to play the jingle. Yes. Okay, so in general, when someone is completely new to web security, I typically recommend to start with something else than the Juice Shop. For example, playing around with WebGoat or Security Shepherd or some tool like that, which is really lesson-based, right? So you just have, okay, level 1 cross-site scripting. This is how you do it. Or you have to find a trainer who's actually included Juice Shop as the exercise application. That's basically what I did for many years in my company, and I also had for almost 10 years a university lecture, where I used Juice Shop as the exercise application. And basically one lecture consisted of explaining how, for example, cross-site scripting works, then doing some exercise in Juice Shop, then explaining how to mitigate this vulnerability, and then giving people some homework for the harder Juice Shop challenges. So that kind of setup, and these kind of lectures are public. So my own one is public. I think the one that Timo Pagel did is also public. So you can find examples how to set this up. And I know that there's also trainers who are using Juice Shop in their trainings. But if you want to learn on your own, you can of course start with the tutorials, right? So basically do only the challenges which come with this little helper, step-by-step instructions, but still it's useful to actually start with something easier, more lesson-based, more structured, because if you have no idea what's going on, then Juice Shop can be a bit overwhelming. Yes? Are you aware of any disciples going on the dark side? What is the dark side? So the commercial side, or? I mean, like with all security tools, I don't know if someone abuses this, right? We did some precautions in Juice Shop so that you cannot too easily cause some real harm. For example, all our stored cross-site scripting challenges and also some remote code execution challenges will automatically be disabled, meaning the vulnerability will not be deployed when you put them, for example, in a Docker container in the cloud, right? So that at least you cannot accidentally deploy some public-facing Juice Shop and then get other people get attacked with stored XSS links that they receive. But yeah, Juice Shop users, of course, they can they can become evil if they intend to, but that's valid for all security tool users, I would say. No more questions? Then I hope that the audio works, and I will play the jingle, and thank you all for being here today.